In 427 BC, after the city-state of Mytilene's failed attempt to declare independence from Athens, the Athenians angrily decided that all the men of the city should be put to death, and the women and children sold into slavery. They then sent a trireme to Mytilene advising to waste no time in taking care of these orders. In 478 BC, the Athenians, in an attempt to protect Greek city-states from foreign powers after the Persian Wars, formed the Delian League, in which city-states from Greece contributed either ships or money to the island of Delos for protection. Shortly after its inception, however, Athens began to take advantage and use the funds for its own purposes. So soon afterwards, the city-state of Naxos attempted to break away from the league. However, the Athenians came and crushed the city for their attempt to defect from the so-called alliance. Now, the other cities of Greece then came to realise that they were not in some alliance with Athens, but in fact subjects to the Athenian Empire. So eventually, with the threat the Athenians presented to Sparta and Athens' aggressive handling of other Greeks, war broke out between the two great superpowers of ancient Greece, Athens and Sparta, known as the Peloponnesian War. During the Peloponnesian War, a plague in Athens killed about a quarter to a third of their population, and the death of the great Athenian leader, Pericles. Now back to 427 BC, with the Athenians in a weakened state and promise of Spartan protection, the leaders of Mytilene, the largest city of Lesbos, no longer wanting to be under Athenian subjugation, revolted from Athens. However, during the preparations for the revolt, a number of things went wrong for Mytilene. Informants in Lesbos told Athens of the revolt. The oligarchs of Mytilene didn't have the support of the lower class. Plus, with Sparta not arriving in time to help them against Athens, the rebellion quickly came to an end. Now, after the Athenians' enraged decision to kill all the men of Mytilene and sell all the women and children into slavery, the next day brought remorse and questioning as to whether that was really the right punishment, and whether their temper maybe got the best of them. So the Athenians decided to have a second debate, which was something rare in those times. The two arguments which the author Thucydides in the history of the Peloponnesian War presented were from Cleon and Diodietos. Cleon, which Thucydides describes as the most brutal man in Athens, went first. And Cleon makes several arguments supporting the decision made yesterday. He first of all begins by questioning democracy and free speech, by saying people should only listen to the common man rather than intellectuals. Intellectuals will try and spin certain points to fit their own agenda. He then says that by being compassionate towards the Mytileneans will encourage more rebellions from other city-states, and that it's important to use the Mytileneans as an example for city-states who will try to revolt in the future. He then appeals to the Athenian sense of justice, because the Mytileneans were treated relatively well compared to other city-states in the Athenian Empire, and were held in a higher regard. The fact that the Mytileneans sided with the Spartans for this revolt, and because the revolt was premeditated, it really angered the Athenians. So Cleon's really using colourful words here to appeal to the Athenians' revenge and really get them riled up. But after Cleon's speech, Diodietos, who Thucydides says was the most against the decision of yesterday, goes next. And he begins by saying haste and passion are bad for good counsel. So calm down, pretty much. And not to think about justice or even compassion, but just to think about what's best for Athens at the time. And not to think about this as a court of justice, but as a political assembly. He disagrees with Cleon's view that compassion will trigger further rebellions, but by being too cruel, he would trigger further revolts, as revolts are in human nature, according to Diodietos. And the city-states who do revolt will have to fight until the very end, because surrender will obviously be out of the question if everyone's going to die anyway afterwards, and then the state will be useless once conquered. Also, Mytilene was not a democracy, as Athens was, but an oligarchy, meaning a few rich people in the state made all the decisions for the poor. So all Mytileneans shouldn't be punished, but just the perpetrators. Now, Diodietos' speech is based entirely on Athenian self-interest. It's not about pity, compassion, or justice for the Mytileneans. It's just what's best for Athens at this time. So on the second day, the vote was very close, but Diodietos' speech convinced the Athenians to change the decision. They then sent a ship to Mytilene and told them to waste no time to catch the ship that was sent on the previous day before they arrived in Mytilene. And Thucydides says just as the Athenians were reading the decision to the Mytileneans, the second ship arrived just in time. Now the oligarchs of Mytilene were still killed, about 1,000 of them, so quite a lot, but the rest of the men survived and the women and children were not sold into slavery. Now in these debates you really get an in-depth look and analysis in the Athenian mindset at that time and what early state democracy looked like. Now this debate, which is called the Mytilenean Debate, really captures some important concepts like the benefits of compassion or lenience in empire, and the Athenian moral degeneration throughout the Peloponnesian War. It highlights the stresses of war, plague, and what humans are capable of under these circumstances. This debate contrasts the Melian dialogue, which happens later, where the Athenians do kill all the men and sell the women and children into slavery in the island of Melos. And a famous quote from that dialogue is, "The strong do what they can, and the weak suffer what they must." Alright, well, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you've got any questions or if you'd like to correct me, please by all means leave a comment. Thanks a lot.